Welcome, I'm Maria Montero, and you are watching our latest edition in a series of special NEWSMAKER interviews we're realizing together with Universum, the global leader in employer branding. If you are a business student looking to work in the world of financial services, odds are that at some point your CV will make its way into the Human Resources Department of the largest Swiss banking institution, UBS. According to Universum's 2018 global survey, UBS is in the top 50 most attractive companies to work for in the world, coming in at number 43 and number 2 in Switzerland. Now, why does young talent favor UBS? Well, the top reasons they cited are interaction with international colleagues, the fact that they recruit only top talent, and that they recognize performance. Now, an interesting part of Universum's global survey is also that they ask the participants to address how they perceive the company by identifying keywords they associate with them. In the case of UBS, these are bank, money, prestige, finance, group. A lot of words that I would probably also associate with a financial services institution. Now, if we widen out now and look at some general job market trends, this is also a part of Universum's global survey that is geared towards Swiss professionals. We find that 41% of professionals are interested in changing their employer within the coming year. Furthermore, 28% of professionals in the banking industry are very likely to recommend their current employer. Now, to give us a better perspective on these results, who better to walk us through that than the Group Head of Human Resources for UBS, Stefan Seiler. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you.
Welcome to the NEWSMAKER.
Great to be here. Thanks.
All right, with your help, I look forward to getting your inside perspective, of course, on the UBS culture. But first, let's start with these figures. I mean, is there anything that stands out to you, anything that perhaps surprised you or exceeded or didn't meet your expectations?
No, I think in general, it's great to be, again, part of the top 50 organizations globally. And number 2 in Switzerland is a very strong ranking, given that this is our home market, where we have about 1/3 of our population, of our employees sitting in Switzerland. So it's a great result for us. It's a great recognition for the work I think we do, be it on the marketing side, but also be it on the management of the organization, that this is recognized, that we are an employer of choice by the students who are thinking about where they want to go and work to.
And how important are these kinds of rankings for you?
These rankings are pretty important.
Pay attention?
Yes, we do pay attention to it. Rankings are a form of feedback, which in the general feedback, we are always very interested to hear it. Obviously, we prefer when it's positive, but we also listen to the critical one very well. The feedback basically tells us that we are positioning our organization the way we plan to position it. How does our activity resonate in the market? And when we see then the results that we do get the impacts in the market, in the labor market, which we aspire to, then of course we are proud and continue that way. And we also dig then into the details to understand even better how to position UBS as an employer of choice, but also how to work at UBS to stay an employer of choice, because the positioning is one element. The true reality, how it is to work in an organization, is then the other element to focus on.
Now, we looked at also interesting the reasons people want to work at UBS. International colleagues, for example, and recruiting of only the best talent. I mean, these are things that, that you recognize. And recognizing performance is also important.
Yes. This is what we took up also in our employer value proposition, which we relaunched about 2.5 years ago. We went out into the market and tried to understand what are people attributing to UBS. And what we found is that we are seen as an organization, as a bank, with a culture of high levels of collaboration, high level of integrity and development, and also high ambitions. And if we can now combine personal development with collaboration in a global environment, then I believe we have a very attractive package to offer for people who want to grow their career with us.
And how important is this aspect of international diversity?
That's a very important aspect. I think banking becomes more and more global. And for us, it's extremely important to have a diverse workforce, and not just a diverse workforce in the different locations, but also a workforce with diverse experiences. So if you have worked in various locations, you get a much better sense of what it needs to be successful in global teams and organizations. And for that reason, we are very proud that we can offer global career opportunities to junior people, but also to very experienced professionals. And we are also emphasizing that this is an opportunity we actively promote within the organization.
And is UBS the kind of place where you really develop from within, or do you often go outside of UBS to recruit people? What's the...
We do have a motto, internal first. And what this means, we started with that focus about 2 years ago, where we realized that internal mobility becomes a key aspect for an employer like us, in particular here in Switzerland, where we are such a large employer in a relatively small labor market, where we need a lot of highly educated professionals. So if they can change their profession within UBS, rather than having to change the employer to go and do something else, all benefit. So we benefit from keeping our talent internally. The talent benefits because they are expanding their networks, and in the long run, they become more successful. As the more senior you get in the organization, the more important it is that you have seen various places, not that just a silo career, but you have been in various departments, that you understand much better on what you need to do in order to achieve results in the end, with compliance, with risk, with business, with strategy. If you have seen all these different elements yourself, you understand much better how to manage a large business rather than having been in a silo only throughout your whole career.
And when you look at people from outside, for example, do you also consider people that come from other careers? Because one of the challenges that come up again and again when you talk to people looking for jobs in Switzerland specifically, is that it's very in the box. Like, you know, that when they go for a job, it's very limited. It's not like, and that in other places you can come at it from a different perspective, from a different background, and still apply for a certain job and be given an opportunity. Where do you stand there?
I think globally what we see more and more is that we are looking for capabilities rather than only experience. Because what we see in a very fast-changing environment where your skills you need to do your job well basically change every 24 months, because you have new technology coming in, you have new approaches how we reach out to our clients with digitalization.
I was going to say, we're going to get to that.
Absolutely. So very, very happy to go more into detail there. So therefore, it becomes much more important to have people who are agile and can learn fast and adapt to changing environments, rather than looking for particular skills where you would only hire if somebody has a particular experience in a particular environment, because that person might be limited in the future to develop into other areas or keep pace with the changes.
And as an HR manager, I mean, are you ever frustrated by the fact that you make a choice and you champion someone, and then when it comes down to recommending it to management, they say, no, he's not a finance guy or a finance woman, you know?
I mean, there is always this battle when it comes to experience versus capability and potential, that if you want to have fast impact on day one, obviously experience in that area is one of the aspects you're looking for. When you then think in a mid and long-term perspective, you much more focus on the question of potential. What can the person learn? How can the person adapt? And here there are indeed at times interesting discussions, I would say, between...
Very diplomatic.
Yeah. You could also say sometimes challenging discussions, I fully agree. Where you do have the discussion, okay, how can this person perform on day 1, 2, or 3? Our focus is then always, does it really need to be on day 1, or can it also be on week 3? Because that's the time horizon fast learners need to learn and pick up stuff. And then we also need to explain that most people don't come into the organization as single contributors. They always enter an ecosystem that is actually operating pretty well. So therefore, if somebody's not an expert in something, this can be taken up by the ecosystem, and that person can develop into the role.
Because at the end of the day, I mean, when you hire somebody for any job, you go on, and you can see everything, you can see all the qualifications you want on a piece of paper, but you have to go with your gut.
Your gut is very important, but also, I always say...
Or not, so I don't know.
I always say, I always say your head should control your gut, but your gut needs to challenge your head. So basically, the reasoning needs to be challenged by the feeling. Because if something doesn't feel right, then most probably something is not right. Even though all the facts would point in one direction, if it doesn't feel right, I would always go back and rethink it again. So there is an interesting play between feeling and rational facts. And I think it's important that we bring both to the table. I think what is extremely important is that we understand that cultural fit and personality are extremely important elements in order to be successful in a modern job market and job environment. It's not just the capabilities and the technical skills. And for that, we, for instance, introduced in our junior talent hiring process, the first step you do is a cultural fit assessment. So does the person fit into UBS culture?
And what is UBS culture?
UBS culture is highly collaborative, is focused on development, it's focused on highest level of professionalism, and is willing and ready to innovate and be a driver in the future of the financial markets. And then this combined with the global scale, where we can offer this global reach, with a focus by that on diversity, because we believe our clients are diverse and therefore we need to be diverse as an organization as well to address their needs the best way. That, I would say, is what UBS culture is best described. Our EVP has a slogan, if I can summarize it in one sentence: we, not just me. That's how we work at UBS.
We, not just me.
Exactly.
Okay, so you have a, like you said, a strong focus, it seems, on diversity and inclusion. So let's talk a little bit more about this in particular, because it's not only towards women. UBS also supports, for example, Pride in Zurich, which is for the LGBT community in the city. Yeah.
We have a number of diversity initiatives, but also a number of groups, employee networks. For instance, the LGBT network, the All Bar None, which is the women's business network. We have a cultural diversity network. So we have a number of different networks to focus on a diverse and inclusive work environment.
Why is this important?
This is extremely important. If you are a global player with global teams working together in order to address the needs of clients on a global scale, but also in very different markets, you need to have a global and diverse perspective. We know from a lot of studies that diverse teams perform better if they are managed well. It's more difficult to manage diverse teams than homogeneous teams. But if you manage diverse teams well, they perform better. And if I look at the fast-changing world and the diversity we have within each regional market we have, but then also on a global scale, we can only address that properly if we have a diverse management team from a gender perspective, from an age perspective, from a cultural background perspective, sexual preferences perspective. This all falls under that diversity, and we then need to combine that with inclusiveness so that we value these views within the organization.
And do you feel, given the recent events all over the world, Me Too movement, for example, do you feel a growing pressure to address these issues in the workplace of employee safety?
Yes, this is certainly an element that has more attention.
Have you had to change anything in order to address?
We do have relatively strong policies in place already, but we have a review right now going on to look into all the different aspects, be it on sexual harassment, be it on proper management conduct, that we do a review. How can we ensure that safety, fairness, and a respectful work environment is a crystal clear statement we send to the market, but also to our employees, and that all our managers and employees understand that there is really a zero tolerance against any type of misbehavior and misconduct. And when the issues are raised, we have special teams looking at it and investigating each single case, that we do justice to the people that are involved.
So definitely probably more of these cases coming your way as more people talk about it. Do you find?
We do. The number of cases has actually not increased dramatically, but what has
more
increased is the attention towards the cases, and I think the awareness that this is really an important topic to focus on. Yeah.
And when we look at also gender equality and parity, in the workforce. This is also something, I mean, I think UBS has 40% women on the board.
Exactly, on the board, yes, we have about 40%. We have 4 women in the board. We have 2 women in the group executive board. And overall, we have our workforce consists of about 40% women. We have about 25% on managerial level. And our aim is to drive this up to 1/3, so about 33% in the years to come. Important is, this is a long-term effort because we need to build the talent, and we then need to make sure that the female talent stays attracted to us as an employer, and that we groom together their careers, that the development of the female careers fit also well into the career development paths of UBS.
And so you find that this has been a challenge?
It is a challenge.
It is a challenge.
In particular, in the Swiss market, it's a particular challenge.
Why?
I think there are a number of reasons playing to it. UBS is not alone in this challenge. So I think if you look at the Swiss statistics overall, UBS is positioned above the median. So we are in the upper class, in the upper group of the market, but it is still a big challenge. This probably is also historically driven the perception of
Historically
society.
a man's world, financial services.
Exactly. And Switzerland also as a country that has a relative high level of masculinity index in different surveys that are run. So I think this is a challenge, but we are ready to tackle it, and we are helping actively to drive this changing the perception in the society.
Speaking of retaining, that number that 41% of professionals are interested in changing their employer in the coming year, does that make you nervous?
It would make me nervous if this is a UBS number. We do annual surveys with our employees, and we usually have a response rate. This year was 83%, so it's a pretty good picture of what our employees really think about UBS. And we have this specific question in there. Do you plan to change your employer within the next 3 years?
Well, they better not say yes.
Our rating is at 75% of people say, no, I intend to stay for more than 3 years. And this is a pretty good number, because this shows there is a high level of attractiveness for our employees to stay with UBS. And I link this back to the good development opportunities and to the big focus on internal mobility.
And a recognition of success, remuneration is also part of the puzzle.
Absolutely. I think if people perform well, if the organization performs well, and people spend a lot of time for the success of the organization, then they should also be compensated in a fair way. And we are working in an environment where we are capable to compensate our people in a fair way, and also with interesting packages, be it on the salary and incentive level, but also be it with regard to benefits they have in addition to base salary and incentive. So it's I think it's an interesting industry to be in, and it's UBS in particular an interesting employer to be part of.
Yeah, it's an interesting debate with people. I was speaking to a professor recently who's against the bonus systems, where she says that doesn't really motivate people in the end. But banking services has a different experience.
I would then go back to my academic days for such a debate. I mean, of course, there are pros and cons to every system, how you compensate and incentivize your employees. But I think you need to look at this from an industry perspective, and then the industry needs to move together into the future. And I'm sure we will see some changes over the years to come, how individuals or team are compensated. But overall, I think the system right now is a pretty stable one, where there's a lot of scrutiny on making sure we can justify why somebody gets paid a certain level of money and somebody else gets paid a different level of money.
Okay. So in the end, happy employees make happy clients.
That's what we hope so. Yes, absolutely.
is your stay. So we mentioned the role of digitalization. What effects is digitalization having on the people front, on the labor front for you? Do you find that you're having to downsize because of this, or just retrain, or what's that look like?
I think it goes a bit in all different directions. What we see is that reskilling becomes extremely important. As I mentioned before, the half time of skills and knowledge is decreasing almost every day, because changes happen faster and faster. We can almost see a an incremental change of speed of change, which is not linear but exponential, and therefore people need to learn much more in a much shorter period of time. So therefore reskilling becomes an extremely important aspect. We need to make sure that the employability of our employees is at the forefront of all we do. So they may have to change their employer if we have a restructuring going on, but they always should be trained in a way that they easily find a job, either with us, a new job, or with somebody else in the market. And that's a very promising result we see in Switzerland, but also across the world. Employees from UBS who have to go to a different employer, they usually find interesting opportunities outside of UBS if they have to leave because of restructuring. And I think this is a responsibility we as an employer have to make sure our people are well positioned in the labor market, predominantly for ourselves and for our clients. But if they have to leave and do something else, that they find other opportunities outside in the market. So reskilling is one element. Then a second element is automation. We see more and more repetitive jobs to be automated. So this can be done by robots, by machines who do repetitive work. AI, for instance, is a buzzword. And these algorithms, these machines, they can do work which has been done typically by human beings in the past. And then we need to reskill these human beings to do more value-add work. This will lead to less people in some areas, but I foresee that we will have over time more jobs overall, either at UBS or outside of UBS in industries which do not exist today. So I believe we will see a talent crunch rather than too many talents in the market. Because we will see more and more faster developments, which requires a lot of human beings, a lot of people to drive these development forwards, to train people, to change cultures, to develop new technologies. So maybe we see different jobs, but I don't foresee that we see less jobs.
All right, so definitely an evolution in the war on talent.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Evolving in a different direction. So just to finish up, a little bit about you. Now, you started or one of your first jobs was Credit Suisse. You were in New York for a few years. Yeah. And then you went into academia, as you mentioned earlier, and then you went to UBS. Now, when you were looking for a job in between, what about UBS said to you, I want to go work there?
First, I think it's the people I knew at UBS. These were people who really resonated very well with what I want to stand for, with what I believe is good management, with what I believe is future-oriented and at the same time stable and ongoing performance.
So people in your network.
People in my network, exactly. This was one of the key drivers. And if I then look at the attributes that are linked to what made UBS an attractive employer, it's definitely the combination of highest level of professionalism combined with the willingness and readiness to innovate. And this in a collaborative global environment, this is, as I mentioned before, a pretty appealing value proposition at the senior level, but also at the junior level.
And always HR, because you are, can I say, a career human resources person, because even when you were back at the Swiss Military Academy at ETH, you were already studying human behavior and management and leadership, and so this is a passion of yours.
Yes, it is a true passion, and it's a big privilege that I can have such a career in an area where I'm passionate about. I'm a psychologist by training. I then did a lot of research in the area of human behavior, in particular in decision making. So how do people make decisions in challenging managerial situations?
Is there an overall thing that they do?
What is interesting, we are very much driven by situational parameters, almost even more than by our own thinking, which is a bit a sad finding, but I think it's very important for organizations to focus on that. So each individual has focus areas which are important to us, and then we all work in a context and in an environment that is driving our behavior. So therefore, organizations need to pay a lot of attention, and here we touch the area of culture, that there is the right culture to support the right behavior, because there's a high likelihood that even good people make wrong things or bad things in a bad culture. So therefore, culture is so important for organizations to produce sustainable performance, to avoid bad behavior, and to support and foster positive behavior.
So just to finish up, I always like to ask the gentlemen in the room also how they balance their professional and family lives? Because, you know, ladies, we get that question all the time. What is your secret?
I don't think there's a secret. And by the way, I think it's equally interesting and challenging for male and female to bring all that under one umbrella. My advantage is I really get a lot of positive energy from the work I do. And therefore, it doesn't drag energy away from me. And if I then come home energized, there is a second area where I get energized from. It's my family. I have 2 little kids, and it's fantastic to spend time with them, to see how they see the world, and to spend as much time as possible with them next to work. That's how I try to balance all the different interests, try to bring them under one umbrella.
Now, I don't think you're talking to them about their future jobs yet.
Not yet.
But what would you tell them?
What I would tell them is be curious, be interested in data and in science, and become good in interacting with other people. Because I think if you are well trained on the science side, and at the same time you are very agile and versatile in human interactions, then you have a skill set and ability which differentiates you from many others. That's what I would tell them, but they should focus on what they like to do most, and they will be most successful.
Just be creative.
Exactly.
That's the skill of the future, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much, Stefan. It was lovely having you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the invitation. It was great to be here.